Subscribe to Life Stories to begin today's story. What would you do if the person you trusted most betrayed you in the most shocking way? Jessica thought she had a loving marriage. But one night, everything changed. Her husband, Ryan, secretly stole her credit card details and went on a luxury trip to Europe, completely unaware that he had just walked into a trap of his own making. This is a story of deception, justice, and a woman reclaiming her power. Stay with us as we unravel the incredible downfall of a man who thought he could get away with it. Subscribe to Life Stories to begin today's story. The first thing I noticed when Ryan walked through the door wasn't the confidence in his step or the smug grin stretched across his face. It was the scent, leather, cologne, and the faintest trace of expensive champagne. It clung to him like a second skin, blending seamlessly with the arrogance he wore so naturally. He tossed his sunglasses onto the coffee table with a casual flick of his wrist. His tailored suit settling perfectly around his frame as he adjusted his cuffs. The shine of his new shoes reflected the dim light of the living room. Behind him, his suitcase stood tall, unmistakably expensive, adorned with the logos of high-end designers. "Thanks for the upgrade, my dear," he said, stretching his arms before settling onto the couch with the kind of ease only a man without a conscience could manage. I should have been furious. I should have confronted him right then and there. But instead, I laughed. A genuine, full-bodied laugh that bubbled up from deep within me, catching even me off guard. Ryan's expression flickered, just for a second, his smugness giving way to confusion. "What's so funny?" he snapped, frowning as he sat forward. I shook my head, still chuckling. "Oh, Ryan," I said softly, my voice laced with something he didn't yet recognize. "You have no idea what you've done." At 34, I thought I knew love. I thought I understood what it meant to be someone's partner. To stand beside them through thick and thin. When I met Ryan 7 years ago, I was drawn to his charm. His ability to turn even the dullest moments into something electrifying. He was a dreamer, a storyteller. The kind of man who could convince you that the impossible was just within reach if you only dared to believe in him. And I did. While he bounced from one grand scheme to the next, I stayed grounded, building a career in cybersecurity, a field that demanded caution, logic, and a meticulous attention to detail. Where Ryan saw shortcuts and easy wins, I saw risks and consequences. But love has a funny way of dulling the sharp edges of reality. I ignored the warning signs, the financial secrecy, the vague explanations about his fluctuating income, the way he always had an excuse, a reason, a justification for why his latest venture hadn't quite panned out. I wanted to believe we were a team, that his ambitions and my stability balanced each other out. Then, one night last week, at precisely 2 a.m., Ryan made the mistake he couldn't charm his way out of. I had been asleep upstairs when it happened. He must have waited until my breathing slowed, until he was sure I was deep in sleep before he crept downstairs. In my line of work, I've spent years training people to recognize scams, to be wary of threats lurking just beneath the surface. But I never imagined I'd need to apply those lessons in my own home. Ryan used my laptop to access one of my credit cards. He copied the details, snapped a few pictures with his phone, and slipped back into bed as if nothing had happened. But the next morning, as I sat at the kitchen table sipping my coffee, my phone lit up with a flood of alerts. Transactions I hadn't made, nearly $50 drained from an account I knew hadn't been touched the night before. At that moment, the illusion shattered. Of course, Ryan was behind this. Who else could it be? But instead of panic, something unexpected settled over me, calm. Because what Ryan didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have known, was that the card he used wasn't just any credit card. It was a dummy account. One specifically designed for fraud detection training. Every charge he made, every indulgent purchase, designer clothes, expensive watches, first-class flights to Paris, had already been flagged, reported, and logged by the very systems I helped build. He hadn't just stolen from me. He had walked straight into a trap of his own making. I picked up my phone and dialed my lawyer. "Danielle, you're not going to believe this," I said, my voice steady, controlled, and when I told her, she burst out laughing. Wait, she said between chuckles, "Let me get this straight. Ryan stole a fake credit card? One that's literally designed to detect fraud? Exactly. Danielle let out a long whistle. Jessica, you might be the luckiest, or the smartest, woman I know. I'd like to think it's the latter, I replied, allowing a small smile to touch my lips. For the rest of the week, I stayed quiet. I watched as the alerts kept rolling in: 5-star restaurants, luxury hotels, extravagant shopping sprees, every night. While Ryan was halfway across the world indulging in stolen wealth, I was documenting every move he made. And then, just a few days later, he left me a note on the counter. Taking some time for myself. Don't wait up. I traced the words with my fingers, shaking my head at the sheer audacity. Ryan thought he was untouchable. That I would never find out. That I wouldn't do anything about it. But what he didn't realize was that he hadn't just stolen money. He had stolen trust. He had taken something sacred, something built over years, and crushed it under the weight of his own greed. And now, it was only a matter of time before he learned exactly what that would cost him. I spent the next few days in a state of surreal clarity. It was strange how calm I felt, as if the weight of my marriage had already lifted. Even though Ryan was still obliviously gallivanting across Europe. Each night, I would sit by the dim glow of my laptop, sipping tea, watching the fraud alerts roll in like a series of small victories. Paris, London, Rome. He was making the most of what he thought was my generosity. Checking into 5-star hotels, dining in Michelin-starred restaurants, buying designer suits and watches as if he were some Wall Street executive rather than an unemployed man with an ever-growing pile of bad decisions. And he had no idea that with every charge, every swipe of the stolen card, he was tightening the noose around his own neck. On the third night, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. A calm, authoritative voice greeted me. Ms. Harper, this is Special Agent Mitchell with the Financial Crimes Division. We've identified significant fraudulent activity tied to your account. Do you know who might be responsible? I didn't hesitate. Yes, I said, setting my teacup down carefully. My husband, Ryan Harper. There was a beat of silence on the other end. Your husband? I explained everything, the dummy credit card, my cybersecurity background, the way Ryan had unwittingly set off an entire fraud investigation against himself. Agent Mitchell listened without interrupting. And when I finished, he let out a low whistle. That's a new one, he admitted. You'll need to provide a formal statement. But based on what we've already flagged, he's in serious trouble. A strange mix of emotions surged through me. Relief. Yes. Satisfaction. Absolutely. But beneath all of it was something deeper. An ache that came with the realization that I wasn't just taking down a fraudster. I was ending a marriage. A part of my life that I had once believed in. Once fought for. Ms. Harper, Mitchell continued, his tone softer now. Do you want to press charges? I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. It wasn't a question of if. Ryan had made his choice. I was just ensuring he faced the consequences. Yes, I said firmly. I want to move forward. Understood. By the time I hung up, my hands were steady. There was no room for doubt anymore. I stayed quiet for the rest of the week. Waiting. Watching. Then, on the 5th day of his spree, I found a note on the kitchen counter in his usual scrawled handwriting. Taking some time for myself. Don't wait up. The arrogance of it made me laugh. As if I had been waiting for him at all. That night, I sent a text to Danielle. He's still spending. What's our next step? Her reply came within seconds. We let him walk right into it. The more confident he is, the better. I smirked. Perfect. Ryan thought he was untouchable. He thought he had outsmarted me. But what he didn't realize was that I had already won. The night before Ryan returned, I sat alone in the quiet of my living room, staring at the soft glow of my phone screen. The fraud alerts had stopped coming in, signaling that his grand adventure was finally winding down. I knew he'd be back soon, sauntering through the door with the same smug confidence he always carried. Oblivious to the storm waiting for him, I had spent the past week preparing, coordinating with Agent Mitchell, working with Danielle to ensure every legal angle was covered, and, most importantly, steeling myself for what was about to unfold. And then, just as expected, The front door swung open. Ryan stepped inside, dropping his designer duffel bag onto the floor with a satisfying thud. His expensive cologne filled the air, mixing with the scent of fine leather and overpriced indulgence. He stretched, exhaling loudly, as if he had just completed some exhausting task rather than a fraudulent joyride through Europe. "Thanks for the upgrade," he said, grinning as he shrugged off his tailored jacket and draped it over the couch. "You really outdid yourself this time." I almost wanted to laugh. He still thinks I don't know. Instead, I leaned casually against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You should have told me about that card ages ago," he continued, kicking off his pristine shoes. "Imagine how much fun we could have had together." I tilted my head, amused by his audacity. "And how exactly did you think this was going to end?" He smirked. "Come on, Jess. You're always so uptight about money. It's not like you couldn't afford it. I figured you'd get over it once you saw how happy it made me." His words were meant to be charming, reassuring, a well-rehearsed script designed to manipulate. But all I could see was the sheer entitlement, the selfishness dripping from every syllable. I bit back a smile, knowing what was coming next. "So, the watches, the flights, the hotels, you thought all of that was just a gift from me?" "Not thought," he said confidently, pointing at himself. "Knew. It's about time you loosened up." I gave him nothing, just the same tight-lipped, unreadable expression. And then, like clockwork, Ryan disappeared into the shower, humming some upbeat tune, entirely unaware that his little European fantasy was about to collapse around him. The moment I heard the water running, I picked up my phone and sent a quick message to Danielle. "He's back, ready to move forward." Her reply was immediate. "Perfect. I'll alert Mitchell." By the time Ryan stepped out of the bathroom, dressed in casual sweats, his hair still damp, the house had already taken on an eerie kind of stillness. He flopped onto the couch, reaching into his bag to pull out a gleaming gold watch. "You should have seen Paris," he said, holding it up to the light. "The shops, the restaurants, it was like a dream." I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "Sounds incredible. Tell me more." And he did. For the next 15 minutes, he launched into a detailed, exaggerated account of his lavish week, describing the 5-star suites, the rooftop bars, the champagne. He spoke with wild hand gestures, grinning as he recalled every moment, completely unaware that I was recording the entire conversation on my phone. "The best part?" he said, holding up the watch with a satisfied smirk. "Nobody suspected a thing, not even you." I smiled. "Oh, Ryan, you have no idea." The next morning, a firm knock echoed through the apartment. I already knew who it was before I even opened the door. Standing there was Agent Mitchell, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. His expression was professional, but I could see the glint of certainty in his eyes. "Good morning, Ms. Harper," he said. "Is Ryan home?" I stepped aside, motioning toward the living room where Ryan sat scrolling through his phone. Oblivious to his fate. "Feel free to make yourselves comfortable," I said, my voice even. Ryan looked up, his brows knitting together as he saw the officers stepping toward him. "What's going on?" he asked. Sitting up straighter, Agent Mitchell pulled out a document. "Ryan Harper, you are under investigation for multiple counts of credit card fraud and unauthorized use of financial accounts. We'd like you to come with us for questioning." I watched as the color drained from Ryan's face. His confidence evaporated in an instant. "What? No. This has to be a mistake," he stammered, looking at me for help. "Jessica, tell them this is crazy." I tilted my head, arms crossed. "I don't know. Ryan, you've been awfully busy lately. Maybe you should explain it to them." The officers read him his rights as they led him toward the door, his protests growing more desperate. "You won't get away with this," he shouted. I smiled. "Oh, Ryan, I already have." As the door shut behind them, the weight I had carried for years finally lifted. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the beginning of my life. Subscribe to Life Stories for more real-life tales of love, betrayal, and redemption.